bullets. So it's scared.
1862, a couple of things are going to happen. Believe it or not, the Confederates implement the first draft in United States history. And it was the Confederates who did it, not the United States government. No one had ever been drafted into the Army before 1862, and the Confederates are the ones who did it. We have the Battle of Ironclads, the first time metal ships start going at each other. The CSS Virginia had been the United States ship Merrimack, and they turned it into an ironclad. We think it may be, this is always kind of a wives' tale, that some of the iron they used to make the plating for that ship maybe came from over here in their ferry stone. Don't know if that's true 100%, but maybe. Patrick County guys are going to fight some of these battles you might have heard of. Fort Donelson, the 7 days around Richmond, Second Manassas, Antietam, the worst day in the history of the United States. Lost more men than any other battle ever. And Fredericksburg. Patrick County men are in all of these things. And here's one of them. This is Rufus James Woolwine. His daddy was the postmaster in Woolwine, and that's why it's Woolwine. He was born in 1840, so in 1861, he's 21 years old. He's the perfect age to be a Confederate soldier, and he's going to be one. And Company D of the 51st Virginia Infantry. And this is a very unique that we have a picture of him. He's also one of the few people from Patrick County who actually wrote a diary about what happened to him in the war. And it's still around, it's been printed, it's in the Virginia Historic Society. So we're going to talk a little bit about my man Rufus here, as I call him.
Oh, I knew what I was going to say. Judy said the courthouse has never been burned. I don't know if you know how big a deal that is, right? As a young kid, you really don't know, right? But as you get older, you might have to go to the courthouse to look for documents. Okay, that's just a part of life, you know. Grandma passes away, right? Can't find the deed, you know. Gotta go get the deed, right? The deed's been passed down for, you know, someone owned it before Granny. You get what I'm saying? And now it's been passed down for 2, 3, 6. Feels like 100 years, right? But all that stuff is there in Richmond, in the actual capital. The library and stuff was burned to the ground. So they would send copies, right, to Richmond to keep everything in one central location, right? So if you look online and you try to go and find stuff for like Carroll, for example, right, or maybe some other places where you can't find it. So the fact that when they did come through that they didn't burn anything to the ground is a huge event. You can find out who owned slaves in Patrick County if you really want to go dig. Right? You know how everybody was always curious, right? You know, like you could find out. You could find out where your last name comes from, right? So, kind of an interesting thought.
So, talk just a second here about how the Confederate Army works. Rufus Woolwine, and remember the very first slide I showed you, William Dennis Vi, they were in the same company together, and they ate dinner together almost every night during the war, usually 6, 8 of them. They were in a company which usually is supposed to be about 100 men, never is because there's not enough men to make a full company. Rufus will eventually become the captain of his company in the 51st Virginia Infantry. And this is one of the commanders of the 51st Virginia. His name was August Forsberg. And he, believe it or not, was from Sweden. And he ended up commanding Patrick County men. Now, I'm trying to always imagine them communicating with each other, you know. Him sounding like a guy in ABBA and us with our ABBA's way before their time too. I know what I'm talking about. They were in a brigade under Gabriel Wharton, whose house is up at Radford. He would have been in a division that was commanded by John B. Gordon, who's one of the best Confederate generals there ever was. He would have been commanded by Jubal Early, who a lot of you know from up in Franklin County, was a very famous Confederate general. And Jubal Early was commanded by Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee would report to the Secretary of War, and look who he happens to be now, Glenn. He's that John Breckinridge who was running for president several slides back. He's now the Secretary of War for the Confederates. And of course, the president is Jefferson Davis. So that's from Rufus Woolwine to the present. This is how it worked in the Confederate Army.
You talk about them being messmates, because you said that like what that means is, like I'll give you an example, y'all the good old boys over there, right? Everybody knows that, right? Okay, we always talk about that. Well, y'all would be together every day. Boy, y'all just love that, wouldn't you? Hearing James's jokes repeatedly at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? But that's the way it is, you know. So 6 to 8 people would spend every day together, get shot together, basically, you know.
So these men in the 51st Virginia, these are some of the battles they're going to fight throughout the war. There's actually a book about the 51st Virginia. It has a roster. You can look up to see if any of your ancestors were in this regiment. We had more men from Patrick County in this regiment than any other. 2 companies go into this. And this is their commander, Deborah Warden, whose house is still up there at Radford. This is their battle flag. Now, most of you think about a Confederate battle flag as being, red, white, blue, the cross that you see on the back of your pickup. But believe it or not, this was their battle flag. It's the Virginia state flag. The thing you'll learn about the Confederacy is there's no standardization. Every regiment will have a different battle flag. They don't even have the same uniforms. They're all dressed in different colors early in the war. So it's really a mess trying to figure out who's who on a battlefield sometimes. In 1863, Patrick County men are going to continue to fight. Here's some of the battles. You've probably heard of some of these: Gettysburg, Brandy Station, Chickamauga. It gets so bad, Jefferson Davis wants to pardon all the deserters. If you come back to fight, we'll pardon you, because they're running out of men.
I was in that reenactment.
Yeah.
And I was in the 51st Virginia.
Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, there you go. So there's 2 companies of men, like I said, in the 51st. The other thing that happens in January 1st of 1863 is Abraham Lincoln issues the Emancipation Proclamation, which basically is going to free all the slaves who are behind the lines of the Confederacy. What basically it does is it really doesn't free any slaves because they're all behind the lines of the Confederates. But it sets the precedent. And what's the precedent? We're fighting against slavery now. So if you're in England or France or some European country, you're not going to help the Confederates. You remember during the American Revolution, the French came in and helped us win. Well, now Abraham Lincoln has turned it into a political war, so they're not going to help. And this was a very smart political move on his part, but it really doesn't free anybody because the Confederates control all of these places. Places like Missouri and Kentucky and Maryland, it doesn't free any slaves because they're not fighting against the United States. Now, here's some more fellows from Patrick County. Up on the top is John Penn, who was a commander in the 42nd Virginia Infantry. And here are the Penn brothers over here on the left. Any of you ever seen what we call the Pink House? Aurora, it's out on 58 going toward Martinsville. That was their house. It's pink. It's owned by a restaurant guy now, and he's restored it, and it looks pretty good. Yeah. But these also are the Penns who become part of the American Tobacco Company after the war. They become, go down to Reidsville. One of them goes down to Reidsville and becomes part of the American Tobacco Company. But here are 4 brothers from Patrick County who go off to fight in the war. And I think one of them dies, one of them is wounded, just like the right numbers, and 2 of them come back unheard of.
Now these Penns are white.
They're white.
Right? And so they're slaves.
Today, a lot of the people whose last name might be Penn could be descended from their slaves, right?
Right.
Like Harrison's.
Right, like Harrison. You ever heard Harrison a lot? Okay, now we say Harrison, right? Think about that just for a second, okay? Because I'm going to let him tell you what they say, right? When we go to Magna, like I remember, I coached against Harrison's, Magna Vista and Bassett some, but they actually, those are black Harrisons, right? They're black, right? Well, the other ones go by what?
The white people who are named H-A-I-R-S-T-O-N are not Hairston, they're Harston. They pronounce it differently. Harston. And if you run into one of them and pronounce it wrong, they'll correct you.
Right.
Because even in their name, they want to be separate.
Right.
From it. But the reason is the Penns, the Harstons, they were the biggest slave owners in Patrick and Henry County. So the people today, there's almost no white Penns or Harstons. The only time we hear that name is African Americans.
Right.
And so that's why. That's why.
Yeah. I just got a friend request today from Ashley Penn, which you probably don't, I don't know if you remember her, it's been over a decade now since she was here. But I coached her, and she knew where that house was.
Yeah.
We let her off near it.
Well, that house is on the National Register of Historic
Yeah.
Places.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big deal. And it's pink.
Yeah.
It's pink. So they'll probably do a Disney movie there, Glenn, maybe Frozen Part 2 or something.
Nice. Frozen's awesome.
Would you like to sing a few bars from the Academy
No.
Award winning?
Let it go.
Let it go. I was actually dumb enough to think U2 was going to win an Oscar. What was I thinking? Just to show you how old I am. Now, all of you know who Bono is, right? Sings for U2.
You know who Bono is?
Everybody knows who Bono is, sings for U2. Me and Bono the same age. Just to show you how old Bono really is.
Yeah.
Me and him the same age. That's scary. So anyway, this is the 42nd Virginia. We had a whole company of Patrick County guys in this regiment. There's a book about it, and here's their battle flag, which is more like what you probably think of a Confederate battle flag. And here's some of the battles these men. They go all the way to Appomattox, some of them. Now, do we have any Virginia Tech fans in the room here today? There's one there, nice colored shirt he's wearing. John Penn is actually the guy who put the bill in the Virginia legislature to start Virginia Tech. So all you UVA fans, there's the man you should hate right there.
Yeah, Patrick started it.
Back me up one, I went too far. There we go. Now here's the one Glenn loves to talk about.
Yeah, I do like this.
This is Company K, the 50th Virginia. And here's some of the battles they fought in. There's a book about them and their battle flag. And this is Chesley Rakes. Very rare to have a picture of a guy from Patrick County actually fought in the war. But this is him. And a lot of people in Patrick County still named Rakes, who were probably related to him. But of all the guys from Patrick County who fought in this war, these guys saw the worst fight. They're going to be in some awful places to show you. They're Fort Donelson. There was Stonewall Jackson at Chancellorsville. They go to Gettysburg. At a place called the Mule Shoe in Spotsylvania. They see some of the worst fighting of the entire war. It was so bad at the Mule Shoe that there was a tree, it's about 22 inches around, they still got it up there, that the gunfire was so bad that it cut the tree down. Now think about that. There's so many bullets flying that it cut the tree down like a chainsaw. Would you want to be standing around that? I don't think so.
Did y'all know Mr. Rakes, substitute teacher?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that is his family. I taught and coached his daughter, Hillary.
Yeah.
And she was in here listening to Tom, and the next day she came and brought that picture.
Yeah.
She actually had it. They kept a good lineage. It's important to keep some of that. Like if you know someone that has that kind of stuff in your family, right? Just that someone has it, right? So that you can share it later on in life. So it's really neat.
So we're up to 1865 now. A lot of guys from Patrick County are going to be captured at Waynesboro, men in the 50th and 51st Virginia. And I don't usually talk about this, but the guy who captures them really is George Custer, who you probably heard of, ends up getting killed by the Indians at the Little Bighorn. But George Custer is one of the federal commanders at Waynesboro that actually captures these guys. In April 1865, we actually have the only thing that we ever had Union forces come through Patrick County, which gave Glenn the opportunity to write a paper, which he likes to brag about. Confederate Army is going to surrender at Appomattox on April 12th, and then later at Benton Place in North Carolina. And on May the 10th, Jefferson Davis is captured way down in the south part of Georgia, which gave the band the lyric for their song, "The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down." Now, I know they don't know who that is, but you might.
It's an old classic.
So we're going to talk a minute about Glenn's hero. This is George Stoneman, who actually led troops through Patrick County. This is a Yankee cavalry general. He had 4,000 or 5,000 men. And they start from Knoxville. Here's how they come. They stopped in Mount Airy, maybe did a squad car tour, Glenn, I'm not sure. Came on into Virginia, went up to Hillsville, visited some of your people, ended up going all the way to Christiansburg. And they come back to Patrick County, April 7th and the 9th. And then it's not Stewart. Where they come is Taylorsville. the county seat was called Taylorsville. It's named after George Taylor. It was from the Revolutionary War. But most of the time, people called it Patrick Courthouse. Virginia, well, it's Henry Courthouse, it's Patrick Courthouse, it's not Martinsville, it's not Taylorsville.
Yeah.
And this is George Stoneman.
Now, they really did like go down Lover's Leap, right? 'Cause they
Yeah,
went to Hillsville,
well, they went several different
and
directions.
they might have went towards Floyd.
They went
too.
all the way to Christiansburg. They probably really came down what would be kind of Route 8, but it wouldn't
Yeah,
be
Route 8.
It'd be
Yeah.
more like that. But they fan out all over the place. Now, remember, there's 4,000 of them, and there's no Confederates here. There's nobody to stop them. They can come into your town, they can do whatever they want. And because nobody in Stewart, Taylorsville, causes them any problem, they don't burn the courthouse.
Right. What's crazy is, you know how Main Street's on a hill in Stewart? I've never understood. But Main Street's on a hill, and it was like that in 1860. There's a reason it's still like that.
Yeah.
And so imagine 4,500, we're talking about 4,500 people. You ever been to a festival? Block off the streets, right? It's probably about 2,000. I'm talking can't see straight, right?
Yeah.
There's so many people, and there's, you know, like jumping in polar plunge. But anyway, can't see straight, but the idea is, and they're all loaded, all got guns.
Yeah. And they're all on horses.
Patrick County was gonna, we wouldn't go rise again that day.
And they all got horses. And they come in, they spend the night, and then they're gone. But they spent 1-2 nights in what we call the town of Stewart. Here's some of Stoneman's subordinate Union generals. All these fellows would have come through Patrick or Henry County. During Stoneman's raid, a couple funny things happened. This R.J. Reynolds, who of course is going to be a big tobacco magnate. He is a teenage boy. He's actually about y'all's age when this war, when Stoneman's raid was come through. And he does what his daddy tells him. His daddy was a guy named Hardin Reynolds. How many of you went to Hardin Reynolds? Any of you go to Hardin Reynolds? So that's who this RJ's daddy. He went to the school named after him. RJ is told to take the family's livestock and take it up on No Business Mountain and hide it from the Yankees, because you got no business being up there, Glenn. And I love that. No business.
Some of y'all know where No Business Mountain is, don't you?
Yeah, right up behind the Reynolds homestead.
Yeah.
So RJ supposedly takes the family livestock to hide it from the Yankees. Well, the thing that happens though is Hardin Reynolds was concerned about his livestock. What he probably should have been concerned about was his slaves, because I want y'all to think about this. If you're an African-American slave at the Reynolds homestead and you look up and there's a couple thousand Yankee cavalry riding through, what do?
Run after them.
You run after them. You run after them because to go with them is freedom. And that's what happens. A lot of them go with them. And you can see this is Hardin Reynolds saying, my son, the Yankees have been here and tore up everything, and my Negro men have all gone with them. Well, what happens to some of these guys is fascinating. They go back to Knoxville, Tennessee, and they join the Union Army. These are all guys from Patrick County, African Americans, slaves from Patrick County, who joined the Union Army.
You'll notice the fourth one?
Jacob Reynolds, he used to play quarterback here, didn't he?
Reynolds' name, you know, from the homestead there. You know, and here it'll tell you, right? And the information he has here, of course, is that he applied for a pension.
Yeah.
Now, what that means is he actually came back
To Patrick County to live.
and lived in Patrick County after
He got a
fighting for
pension.
the Union.
Yeah, after going and joining the Union. I don't really think he did any fighting, but he joined the Army.
Right, well, they wouldn't necessarily always let him fight, which would be,
But he got a Union pension from the United States government because he was in the United States colored troops. Remember then, they segregated. So the black troops and the white troops aren't together in units like they are now. So he's in the 119th U.S. colored troops. And these are just some of the men from Patrick County who all came back to live here, who went with George Stoneman and then joined the Union Army. To be black in Patrick County during the Civil War is not a very pleasant thing. And we'll talk about some things here. The county had slave patrols. Every night, men from each section of the county would go around and ride